The story from 2 King chapter 4, 18 to 37 beautifully reveals the value of God's grace and His sovereignty over the all aspect of life. In this chapter, we meet two women. The first is a poor, and God used the prophet Elisha to miraculously resolve her financial crisis. The second is the wealthy woman from Shannon, who despite her riches, lack of one thing she desired, a child. God, in His grace, gave her a son as a blessing. At that time, the majority of people were worshipping Baal under the reign of the king Jehoram. Yet, this Shemonite woman chose to follow God, setting herself apart from the prevailing culture. However, her faith is severely tested when her son suddenly dies. This moment can be troubling if we don't understand God's full control over life circumstances. Why would God give her a child only to take him away? The emphasis of this story isn't solely on childbirth, but on God's power over the life and death. The Bible highlights the son's miraculous resurrection more than his birth, teaching us that while God's grace is freely given, it is immeasurably precious and should never be taken for granted. The Shunammite woman comes to understand that both her son's birth and death are part of God's divine plan. Her faith deepens as she learns that life and death are in God's hand, leading her to trust Him more fully. She stands firm in her faith, even when it goes against the norms of her society. This story speaks to us today. We often experience God's grace in our lives, but we must not forget how precious and sovereign that grace is. We are challenged to trust God's control over everything, even when we don't fully understand. Through this story, we may all grow in our appreciation of God's grace and His ultimate authority over our lives. Today's story has two main parts. The first part is about the Shemonite woman's sons who died. And the second part is about how he was brought back to life. In the first part, the boy told his father, "My head hurts," while helping during the harvest. His father sent him to his mother, but sadly, he died in her arms. Even though she must have been shocked, the Shemonite woman didn't panic. She laid her son under Elisha's bed and closed the door and didn't tell her husband. She believed only God through Elisha could help. She quickly set off to find Elisha, ignoring her husband's questions and simply saying, "Peace, it is well." And she reaches Elisha. She held on to his feet, showing her faith that only God could bring her son back. Elisha realized even he didn't know what was going on because God hadn't revealed it to him. The second part is about how her son was brought back to life. Gehazi, Elisha's servant, placed Elisha's staff on the boy's face, but nothing happened. Elisha entered the room, prayed, and laid on top of the boy, just like his mentor Elijah had done. The boy sneezed 7 times, symbolizing complete healing, and came back to life. The woman thanked Elisha and took her son. This story teaches us a lesson. God is in control of life and death. And the Shemonite woman's faith shows us that only God can truly help us in difficult situations. We can sum up today's story with the 3 simple questions and answers. Number 1, why does God sometimes do the thing in a way that seems confusing? God gave the Shemonite woman a son and then took him away. First, this shows us that God is in control of our life. Second, it helps us understand just a little bit how much it costs for God to send Jesus for us and how big the gift of grace is. Second question, why didn't God tell Elisha that the boy was going to die? This was to show that God is in total control. No person or thing like the staff can take a God's place. But if God allows it, His power can work through anything. We need to focus only on God. Last question, why did Elisha lie on the top of the boy's body? It must have been God's command. Elisha was also like the picture of Jesus, who died in our place on the cross. This act showed that Jesus' death gave us life. In the end, the boy who came back to life would still die again one day. But what today's story really teaches us is the hope we have in Jesus. Our lives are like the Shunammite woman's journey. Many things happen, but we should always focus on God, who controls everything. Sometimes we need to focus on really hard. With the faith in Jesus as our life, we can make it through life's storms. Let's hold tightly to God's control today.